So tonight we're talking about authority, or the wisdom that we can gain from Proverbs and authority. So first I wanted to define authority. What does authority mean? When you hear the word authority, what is that? What's a good definition? Let me just read what I found out, because I wrote it down. The power or right to give orders, make decisions, and enforce obedience. The power to influence others, especially because of one's commanding manner or one's recognized knowledge about something. So you can have authority by your position, or you can have authority by your knowledge. So I found some interesting quotes about authority that I will read. You know, I like quotes. Nothing strengthens authority so much as silence. Leonardo da Vinci said that. Because power corrupts, society's demands for moral authority and character increases as the importance of the position increases. John Adams said that. You might know what President John Adams was? What number? I didn't know. I had to look it up. Second. Second president. Let's see. You can delegate authority, but you cannot delegate responsibility. I like that one. I thought it was pretty good. Byron Dorgan said that. He was a senator from North Dakota from 1911. This is a good one that I thought was very interesting and very telling of somebody's attitude towards authority. My relationship to power and authority is that I'm all for it. People need somebody to watch over them 90%. Wait a minute, sorry. People need somebody to watch over them, period. 95% of the people in the world need to be told what to do and how to behave. Mary Ellen's nodding in agreement. Who said that? You might want to guess. Me? No, I didn't say that. Arnold Schwarzenegger said that. You know, he was governor of California for a while. I just thought that was interesting that 95% of the people in the world need to be told what to do. Is that true? It's sad. I mean, if that is true, I mean, that's a pretty high number. I don't know. I think that just really tells a lot more about his attitude towards authority. Do you think he liked being in authority? I think so too. Some people like being in authority. That doesn't make them a good leader just because they like it, right? This next one's one of my favorites. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Who said that? Jesus did, right? Matthew 28:18. All authority, which that's what we're talking about, is having wisdom and authority, because some of us may find ourselves in positions of authority, or we may find ourselves in positions under authority a lot of times. So Jesus said, all authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. So who's the ultimate authority for everyone? Jesus is, right? Jesus is. So I thought that was a good quote to add to the other quotes of mere humans that I was able to find. So when we look at wisdom for those in authority, what are some good qualities that a good leader would have? I thought I had something else written down. Maybe it's this next page. Found it. I skipped a page. So each of us throughout our lifetime must deal with authority. Some people seek after it. Think like the quote from Arnold Schwarzenegger. Some people seek after it and crave it. They want to be leaders. They want to be in authority. And other people avoid it. They don't want to make decisions. They don't want to be in authority. We all know people like that. So sometimes we do find ourselves in positions of authority. Can you give me some examples of positions of authority that we might find ourselves in? A parent, very good. Yep, got that on my list. Parent, check that off. What else? Job title, your boss, right? Boss man, he's got authority. What else? An elder, okay, got that on my list. Check that off. What else? Law enforcement, police officer, got that on my list right there. They're definitely an authority, aren't they? Especially when the lights are flashing and you know that you were going a little bit too fast. What do most of us do when that happens? We slow down, but then we do what? We wish to ourselves, why was I going so fast? But then we pull over. We pull over because the police officer is in a position of authority, and we want to recognize that. Some people don't. Some people think, good luck trying to catch me. What usually happens to those people? It doesn't end well. They run into other people, right? That happened to me. It usually does not end well if you run from the police. You ever watch those police chases out in California because they've got these helicopters? Now, it's beyond me. Why do people think they can outrun a helicopter? They've got 15 of them in the air watching these police chases, and they just chase them. Anyway, I got two more that I had on my list, positions of authority. President was one. It could be president of anything, president of the United States, president of the Athletic Association, president. And a physician, a doctor. They may have some authority. So, what are some positions that we would be in where we had to submit ourselves to that authority? It's kind of just the opposite of all these things we had. Employee, a child, a citizen. A couple of things that I added to that list too was like because this made me think of that, our group from Peru just got back. When you're traveling to another country, do you respect that country's authority? Typically do, don't you? Typically do. Because a lot of places, especially the ones where you go do mission work, a lot of them, some of them are welcoming, but if you go in and say, hey, I'm an American, I've got freedom of speech or freedom of whatever, and you don't really respect the laws and customs of their country, what typically happens? Yeah, you may not come back. Yeah, good one. You may not come back. Do what? Yes, a cell or a hole in the ground. That could be bad. You would not come back from those typically. And then the other I thought was a player on a team. A coach would be somebody in authority, and a player submits to that authority. Referee, very good. Like in a game or a contest, referee. And as a coach, you're in a position of authority over your team, but you're also under somebody else's authority during that same game. Because what happens when you continue, I'm not saying that you do, but what happens to coaches that continually complain of getting a call? Continually complain over it. Does it ever help you get the next call? Occasionally it might. If you're pointing out, say, this guy's in the lane, he's been in there forever, that may do it. But if you're just constantly berating this referee and there's a close call, do you think he's going to say, I'm going to give this to Jeremy because he's such a good guy. He needs a break? Probably not. Because some of the baseball games that I've seen recently, there were some really close plays at home. The other night, was it last night, LSU and Tennessee? There was a play at the plate where, it was fractions of a second. The replay was so close that if they would have called it either way, you couldn't have been able to overturn it because it was just so close. So we can be in positions of authority but still be under somebody else's authority. So I thought about that as a player. When you're playing for a team and you don't submit to that coach's authority, what does that do for the team? It hurts the team. Hurts the morale. It hurts the morale. And I've seen that in so many different areas, and I think that's one of the things that I appreciate so much about about coaching is you not only have to come up with a scheme to win the game, but you also have to come up with a way to build your team. Because in basketball, you've got 5 different personalities out there on the floor. Now, unless they've played together through travel ball years and years and years, a lot of times that's difficult to develop, that teamwork. But unless they all submit to the authority of the coach, you're going to have somebody pull in a different direction. I remember when I was coaching volleyball, I had that problem, is that they were all their own girls. If you've ever coached girls, nothing against girls, they're just a little different than coaching boys. So I had them kind of gather around, and we were in the gym one day, and they were kind of yang-yang at each other, so I had them kind of gathering around, and you know those little things that you stack on top of each other to jump on? I don't know what those are called. What are those called? They're big plastic things. They're about like 3 feet, about this thick. They weigh probably, about 3 or 4 pounds a piece. Not a lot, just one of them. But there's a bunch of them in the gym, and you can stack them up so you can practice your jumping where you just jump and jump on top of them. You know what I'm talking about? You got a visualization. Okay. So I had each girl pick up one, and they were all able to pick up one. So then I had them all stand in a circle, and each of them holding part of one. Like they were all standing around it in a circle, and they were all just holding part of one, which was very easy for them to do. So then I stacked them up on there, stacked them up, till I had about 10 or 12 on there. And all 10 girls were standing there holding that with no problem. And then I asked them, I said, which one of you by yourself can hold this? And of course, they all kind of giggled. They thought that they could. But the point was that none of them could do that by themselves, is that they had to work together. And I think that was part of the process of building a team. But often where those things don't work out, often wisdom is lacking. And it could be wisdom from those in authority, which I've been guilty of that. And it could be lack of wisdom for those under authority, which I've been guilty of that too. So I'm just guilty. But in Proverbs, what we read about authority, a lot of it is pertaining to kings or princes, advice for them. But I think we can easily apply that to other areas of authority as well. Any comments on authority? Any good examples? Not yet. Edwin? No? Okay. You'll have your chance. All right, so in the book of Proverbs, if you want to turn there, chapter 16, verses 10 through 12. So we're looking at wisdom for those in authority. Chapter 16, verses 10 through 12. An oracle is on the lips of a king. His mouth does not sin in judgment. A just balance and scales are the Lord's. All the weights in the bag are his work. It's an abomination to kings to do evil, for the throne is established by the righteous. So one of the characteristics or things with people in authority, they need to be able to make good judgments. They need to be righteous and be able to make good judgments. Because what happens to their subjects? How are they affected? I guess this is really not a good question, because they are affected. They can be either affected in a good or bad way, I guess is what I'm saying. If the judgment by that person in authority is bad or negative, their subjects will be affected negatively. So they must be righteous. Chapter 20, verse 8. A king who sits on the throne of judgment winnows all evil with his eyes. Does anybody know what winnows means? Because I didn't. I had to look it up. You what? Scatters. What was that? Did you say scatters? Somebody said that over here? Do what? Scatters. Okay. I think the definition I had, because I had never heard winnows. It sounds to me like minnows, and it makes me think of minnows like you use to bait fish. But that's not what it is. So scatters. Okay. To toss about. The definition means to remove, like to blow with a current of air, like you're blowing off one of those little flowers that you blow. And is that a dandelion with the white thing? Okay. Yeah, like that. That's kind of like that. That's kind of winnow. So how does a king, let's read that again. 20 verse 8. A king who sits on the throne of judgment winnows all evil with his eyes. So he scatters, he gets rid of all evil with his eyes. Verse 26, the same chapter. A wise king winnows the wicked and drives the wheel over them. 29, verse 4. By justice, a king builds up the land. And 14 of the same chapter. If a king faithfully judges the poor, his throne will be established forever. So righteous judgment, faithful judgment, all things are good characteristics for himself and for those under him. And God expects a leader to be just. Look at verse 25, chapter 25, verses 4 and 5. Take away the dross from the silver, and the smith has material for a vessel. Take away the wicked from the presence of the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. So one of the good qualities of somebody in authority is that they need to be free from evil influences. What's the best way to be free of an evil influence? Stay away from it. Avoid it. Run from it. Chapter 28, verses 15 and 16. Like a roaring lion or a charging bear is a wicked ruler over a poor people. A ruler who lacks understanding is a cruel oppressor, but he who hates unjust gain will prolong his days. So, hates unjust gain. What does that make you think of? What would be an example of unjust gain? Okay, being dishonest, cheating somebody out of something, coveting something that somebody else has. A good leader does not have those qualities. Chapter 29, verse 4. By justice a king builds up the land, but he who exalts gifts tears it down. I've already read that. I think the point there was bribery. A good leader is not overcome by bribery. Chapter 31. Two through 5. What are you doing, my son? What are you doing, son of my womb? What are you doing, son of my vows? Do not give your strength to women, your ways to those who destroy kings. It is not for kings, O Lemuel. It is not for kings to drink wine, or for rulers to take strong drink, lest they drink and forget what has been decreed and pervert the rights of all of the afflicted. What characteristic is that describing? Two things, I think, really, in that piece of advice for his son. What does he tell him to avoid? You can say it, it's okay. Well, you want to. I'll say it for you. Women. It's to avoid women, right? To avoid women. And what else? Strong drink. Yes, strong drink. What do those two things do to him? They weaken him. They weaken him. They weaken those in authority. Verses 8 and 9 in the same book. Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. So to be fair, just, merciful, generous, those are things that a good leader has, those good qualities. Anything else? Can somebody describe a good leader that they know of, or that a good coach that they've had some qualities, or an example of somebody that you respected and admired that was in a position of authority? Somebody that's consistent, okay? That is a good quality to have, to be consistent. I think that's very important for, all those things that we listed up there, the people that are in authority, I think consistent would be one of them. You always want your parents to be consistent in applying punishment. Police officers, we want them to be consistent in treating this group of people the same as they treat this group of people. So consistency is good. Can somebody think of a situation they've been in where they thought, really good move by that leader, that coach, to gain respect, or to... Mm-hmm. In you also. Mm-hmm. Right. And to me, that shows that they genuinely have your best interests at heart. Instead of making themselves say, hey, look how many people I sent to college, or look how many people I did this. This is somebody that's genuinely wanting you to be successful. Yeah, that's a great example. I can think of somebody specifically who, I don't even know if you would say that they're in a position of authority other than their age and level of wisdom. But this individual, I've known him for probably 30 years, maybe 35, 40 years. I've never heard him say a harsh word or a mean word to anybody or about anybody, ever. And he treats his wife like she's a queen. Never says a harsh word. His word, anything that comes out of his... Jason, do you think it was you? I haven't heard you say a harsh word about Tanya. I haven't. But he is always positive, always trying to find the good in whatever situation is there. And the example that he has set for me, and he probably doesn't even know it, that he's been such a good example to me and that I put him in such high esteem. But the example he's set for me has made me want to be a better husband, a better person, just because of the way he treats people. And I think, to me, that shows us is that, like I said, he may have no idea that he's that good of an example for me. So that kind of made me think, well, am I a good example for those around me? Am I being a good example? What do I need to do better? What's that? That's true. Yeah, Solomon, as we know, was the wisest person to ever live. However, his life was not perfect. He made mistakes. He had some issues that he had to deal with. And what Will's saying is that even though he had all this wisdom and all this knowledge, he knew that he made mistakes. And I think that's a lot of times that's the challenge for us, is that if you're in a position of authority, I think sometimes you have to recognize that you are going to make mistakes. But going back to the characters and qualities of a good leader, I think, humility has got to be one of them as well. You have to be humble, and there may be some situations where you may not have all the answers. You may need to get help from someone else. Just want to tell everybody what to do. But the reality is, like you said, even going back to the nation of Israel, they needed to be told what to do. And Tony Willis and I have talked about this before, that when you look back and you think, when they had the fewest problems is when God was the strictest on them. When he let them have freedom and let them have choice, what typically happened? They messed it up. They veered away. They got further away from God. I mean, how often do we do that? I mean, I think this group here, I think you recognize the importance of staying close to God, reading your Bible, studying, because you're here on Wednesday night. But the less you're here, the easier it is to wander away, to get farther away from God. You don't intend to do it. You may not intend to fall away, go down the wrong path. But the less you're here, the less you're around people that are of the same mindset than you, the easier it is for you to follow temptation and to go down the wrong path. So what else? Let's look for those under authority. I think this is probably where most of us find ourselves more times than not, is we are under somebody else's authority. How should we act? How should we present ourselves? Chapter 24, verses 21 and 22. My son, fear the Lord and the king, and do not join with those who do otherwise. For disaster will arise suddenly from them, and who knows the ruin that will come from them both. So he tells them to fear the Lord and the king. And we don't have a king today. What could take the place of the king in this proverb? And by fear, we're not talking about being afraid. We're talking about reverence, to show reverence and respect. What could take the place of the king in this proverb? Anybody? The president? Okay, that's what I was thinking. I think nobody wanted to say it because you think, do I really? No, the president, can we show respect for the president? Absolutely, no matter who it is. No matter who it is, because we're not necessarily showing respect for the person that occupies that office. We're really showing respect for that office, aren't we? So we can, the president, the governor, somebody in high office. Chapter 16, verse 15. In the light of a king's face, there is life, and in his favor is like the clouds that bring the spring rain. So if you're under authority, it is good to have the favor of who is in authority over you. How do we do that? How do you gain favor of somebody that you're under their authority? Do what you're supposed to do. Do what's expected of you. Is there a line you can cross where it's a little overboard? Maybe you're trying to get a promotion and you go wash your boss's car. Are you trying to gain favor? You are, aren't you? But is that going a little bit beyond what this is saying here? Chapter 19, verse 12. The king's wrath is like the growling of a lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. Chapter 20, verse 2. The terror of a king is like the growling of a lion. Whoever provokes him to anger forfeits his life. So provoking somebody to anger. I can think of a couple of instances where I've seen somebody provoke somebody else to anger. Siblings is what I'm thinking about, a brother and a sister. That's usually where I see that a lot. Is that easy to do, for a brother and sister to provoke the other one to anger? What usually happens? Who gets in trouble? The one that gets angry. not the one that provoked. It's always the one that acts out that gets in trouble. Just like in football, it's always the retaliation that gets the penalty. The first hit never gets called. It's the second one where you hit somebody back that gets called. So what happens when you provoke someone in authority, when you provoke them? What typically happens? And why would you do that? Why would you want to provoke somebody in authority over you? Because you're angry with them? You feel like you maybe have been treated unfairly, unjustly? What else? Because you may not agree with them. You don't like the way they're running the show. You don't like that, so I'm going to provoke you to anger so you'll get in trouble. Did students ever do that in class? To the teacher? They do. They provoke the teacher to anger. So they'll be the ones getting in trouble. Not the students, because they're perfect, right? So what about some qualities we should have when we're under authority of someone else? Chapter 14, verse 35. A servant who deals wisely has the king's favor, but his wrath falls on one who acts shamefully. So our conduct is very important, not just to those around us, an example that we set, but to those that we're underneath. For those in authority, our conduct is very important. Chapter 16, verse 13. Righteous lips are the delight of a king, and he loves him who speaks what is right. So we need to have righteous speech. We need to always tell the truth. In some situations, and sometimes that's difficult, especially when a leader is asking you, how am I doing? And you're like Kenny, and you say, you're doing a horrible job. Sometimes that's difficult. But if they're a good leader, they're soliciting help. They're soliciting information. What can we do better? So it's good to be honest. It's good to be honest and not just tell them something that you think that they want to hear just because they're the boss or they're in a position of authority. It's always important to be honest, to have a pure heart. Chapter 22, verse 11. He who loves purity of heart and whose speech is gracious will have the king as his friend. So you can say kind words, even if you don't like somebody. How many of you have ever had a boss or somebody in authority over you that you really didn't like? That happens a lot, doesn't it? Well, you're looking at, I'm not talking about husband and wife. I'm just kidding. But when you've got somebody in authority over you that you don't like, sometimes it's hard to be nice to them, isn't it? Sometimes it's hard to say something nice and to be kind. But that's what's expected of us. And Jen, I know he likes you. He's kind to you because he loves you. We all know that. Chapter 23, verses 1 and 3. When you sit down and eat with the ruler, observe carefully what is before you and put a knife to your throat if you are given to appetite. Do not desire his delicacies, for they are deceptive food. Do not toil to acquire wealth. Be discerning enough to desist. So what else do we need to have when we're dealing with someone in authority over us? Self-control. Self-control. Sometimes that means what? Not saying what you really want to say when the opportunity presents itself. I'm at fault. I'm at fault for that a lot of times. When I'm asked what I think about the job that was done or whatever, instead of not saying anything, I'd say what I really think. And sometimes that's not always positive and it didn't come out very good. So we need to exhibit self-control a lot of times. Chapter 22, verse 29. Do you see a man skillful in his work? He will stand before kings. He will not stand before obscure men. So skillful in your work, like you were saying, do a good job. Don't give him anything to complain about. Do a good job. Chapter 25, verses 6 and 7. Do not put yourself forward in the king's presence or stand in the place of the great, for it's better to be told, come up here, than to be put lower in the presence of a noble. What's that saying? Is to be humble. Put yourself in a lower spot. Sit yourself at the end of the table. If they want to move you up, let them move you up. Because what's the worst that could happen? You feel like you're important, and you're going to sit up here at this side of the table, and then the boss comes in and says, what? No, you move down here. I'd much rather be in the other way. Be told to move up than told to move back. So be humble. Be humble. In chapter 25:15, with patience a ruler may be persuaded, and a soft tongue will break a bone. So it's be patient and be gentle. Be patient and be gentle. What else? Any other pearls of wisdom on authority? Anybody want to give some good examples of when they've handled themselves really well? Wayne, you've not said much tonight. Yeah. Good times, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But he thought that was his responsibility to straighten you out. Mm-hmm. That is true. I mean, sometimes the lessons we learn are learned very difficultly, but they're still learned. That's a good story. What else? Anybody else got some more good stories? Workplace stories we want to talk about? Susan, yes. Mm-hmm. Because you were the boss. Mm-hmm. I mean, sometimes it's those lessons like that that life teaches us. It's like we were talking about with Solomon. It's like he had all the wisdom in the world, but still he didn't know how to apply it. Or he, in certain areas, he couldn't apply it. And I think the same is for us too, a lot of times, that some of the wisdom that we had is from making mistakes in our own lives. And we look back and think, what a horrible decision that was, but what a great lesson I learned. This is what I learned from it, and moving forward, this is what I'm not going to do again. And from that, I mean, I know you came to Florence and you were my manager, and you were one of the best managers that I ever had. Now, see, that was kind of kissing up. But you were a good manager. We had fun, didn't we? We had fun. So what else? Anybody got anything else they want to add to that wonderful story of authority? Thanks, Wayne. Appreciate that. Anything else? Thank you for your attention. Jeremy's got you next week. We're going to talk about what? Let's see what's on the list. A good name. A good name. That'll be interesting. Just the man to teach that. A good name. Thank you, everybody.